Ja, wunderbar.
What's up, guys? It's your boy, Benny. Elon Musk has gotten himself in trouble again. Libs are so mad because he compared George Soros, the guy who funds literally all of them. Every single leftist cause or leftist DA in America is funded by George Soros. Well, they've criticized Daddy Warbucks for leftist causes. They've criticized a man who spent billions pushing progressive radicalism and communism around the world, reshaping the world in his worldview. And Elon Musk doesn't like that. But you're not allowed to criticize because George Soros also funds a considerable amount of media. And so you're not, like, he's just bought Vice, for instance. George Soros buying Vice as we speak. And so you're not allowed to criticize that. Otherwise, boom, you're anti-Semitic. Well, by the way, nobody's bringing up George Soros' heritage here at all. George Soros says he's an atheist. George Soros says God is made up. George Soros says this to anyone who asks. Just FYI, I think that's somewhat relevant. But anyway, Elon Musk likens billionaire George Soros to X-Men supervillain Magneto after he dumps Tesla stock. That's right. Elon Musk tweeting, Soros reminds me of Magneto. And then continuing on, I'd like to apologize for this post after getting a lot of pushback being called anti-Semitic. It was really unfair to Magneto. The Krasenstein Soros bro, jumped in there in order to defend Daddy Warbucks. You assume that George Soros has good intention. He does not. He wants to erode the very fabric of civilization. Soros hates humanity. Magneto's way cooler. Fair point. And Elon continued on. The mentions here are really good. Satan in the flesh, responsible for millions of deaths, destabilization of countries, wars, governments, coups, poverty, and much suffering around the globe. Pure evil. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll let you decide. We have a clip of George Soros we're going to play you in an interview. And we'll let you decide. There's an interview from 60 Minutes where George Soros talks about his morality, what he believes, and where he comes from, and what his experience actually was during his life, and some of the most significant, critical, and shocking moments of his life. Wait. Elon Musk is attacked by CNN for being anti-Semitic because he criticized George Soros. At the same day, they promote a woman in prime time who called Soros a foreign-born villain replacing the U.S. population. That's right. Caitlin Collins, unfortunately and very inconveniently for her, used to be a conservative, or at the very least play one on TV, and she said this about George Soros.
Good morning. Okay, so George Soros is this foreign-born left-wing guy who essentially wants to change the nature of our country. And in this data dump, one of the memos was about the refugee crisis. And they made 3 points. They think that they've been successful at influencing immigration policy across the world. They think that the refugee crisis is an opportunity to continue doing so. And they think the refugee crisis is the new normal. And George Soros is this guy who is a staunch advocate for open borders. He wants people to be able to go wherever they want, whenever they want, for whatever reason. And for him, he sees this immigration policy, this crisis, as a vehicle to further his immigration agenda.
Elon Musk was equally asked about his tweets about George Soros on a CNBC interview. Went like this.
You tweeted this thing about George Soros. Well, I'm looking for it because I want to make sure I quote it properly. But, I mean, you know what you wrote. But you basically...
I said it reminds me of Magneto. This is like, calm down, people. This is not like made a piddle case out of it.
You also... you said he wants to erode the very fabric of civilization, and Soros hates humanity. Like, when you do something like that, do you
I think that's true. That's my opinion.
Okay, but why share it? Why share it? Especially, why share it when people who buy Teslas may not agree with you, advertisers on Twitter may not agree with you? Why not just say, hey, I think this. You can tell me. We can talk about it over there. You can tell your friends. But why share it widely?
I mean, this is freedom of speech. I'm allowed to say what I want.
Absolutely.
I'm allowed to say whatever I want. I'm allowed to say what I believe. This is, an imperative of freedom of speech. And, oh, by the way, why can't you criticize this guy? George Soros runs the Open Society Foundation, whose sole purpose is to relocate, effectively, the vast majority of the global population into capitalist countries in order to collapse their welfare systems. It's stated on the Open Society Foundation. It's called the Open Society Foundation. Now, he's doing this to Europe. He's doing this to America. They want to open the borders That's what they say. I mean, it's on their website, guys. Okay? It's on their website. The Open Society Foundation, funded by George Soros, the world's largest private funder of independent groups working for justice, democratic government, and human rights. What does this mean? This is exactly what they say it is. This is the opening up of countries' borders, the eroding of a country's actual value systems, a nation's actual reason for being, the dissolving of national peoples, and the creation of a moral morass, essentially just a global society without any differentiating languages, religions, borders. They wish to collapse capitalism as it stands today and create a global oligarchy. And that is why they have given away $400 million. And that's just a small fraction of what George Soros has given away to far left-wing causes. Every city that has some type of horrors going on inside of it with a prosecutor who will not prosecute in America, funded by George Soros, well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the results of the Open Society Foundation. When you see the states of Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York City, for instance, Austin, Texas, when you go through these dangerous, piss-covered streets with all of the vagrancy and crime and open, rampant homelessness and drug abuse, that is the society that George Soros wants to create with his open society. That's what he wants. There you go. 1.5 billion in expenditures. 19 billion. Over the past 3 decades, our giving has focused on supporting people trying to make their communities fairer, freer, and more harmonious. Go wander through the streets of San Francisco and see if it looks harmonious to you. And more importantly, why don't you go ahead and watch this from 60 Minutes, an interview from 1998 with George Soros, talking about his background, talking about his views on morality. And let me ask yourself, if this is the kind of person you want to be in charge of things in your country.
Which George Soros am I talking to now? The amoral George Soros or the moral George Soros?
It's one person. It's one person who at one time engages in amoral activities and at the rest of the time tries to be moral.
To understand the complexities and contradictions in his personality, you have to go back to the very beginning, to Budapest, where George Soros was born 68 years ago to parents who were wealthy, well-educated, and Jewish.
When the Nazis occupied Budapest in 1944, George Soros' father was a successful lawyer. He lived on an island in the Danube and liked to commute to work in a rowboat. But knowing there were problems ahead for the Jews, he decided to split his family up. He bought them forged papers, and he bribed a government official to take 14-year-old George Soros in and swear that he was his Christian godson. But survival carried a heavy price tag. While hundreds of thousands of Hungarian Jews were being shipped off to the death camps, George Soros accompanied his phony godfather on his appointed rounds, confiscating property from the Jews.
These are pictures from 1944 of what happened to George Soros' friends and neighbors.
You're a Hungarian Jew who escaped the Holocaust by posing as a Christian.
Right.
And you watched lots of people get shipped off to the death camps.
Right. I was 14 years old. And I would say that that's when my character was made.
In what way?
That one should think ahead, one should understand and anticipate events, and one is threatened. It was a tremendous threat of evil. I mean, it was a very personal experience of evil.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes, yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all. Maybe as a child you don't see the connection, but it created no problem at all.
No feeling of guilt.
No.
For example, that I'm Jewish, and here I am watching these people go, I could just as easily be there. I should be there. None of that.
Well, of course, I could be on the other side, or I could be the one from whom the thing is being taken away. But there was no sense that I shouldn't be there, because that was, well, actually, funny way, it's just like in markets, that if I weren't there, of course I wasn't doing it, but somebody else would be taking it away anyhow. In other words, whether I was there or not, I was only a spectator, the property was being taken away. So I had no role in taking away that property. So I had no sense of guilt.
Are you religious?
No.
Do you believe in God?
No.
Soros told us he believes God was created by man, not the other way around, which may be why he thinks he can smooth out the world's imperfections. When we went with him to Ukraine, he was treated like a visiting head of state and was received by the president. Then he was received by the prime minister and finally the central bank.
20% in cash.
They even allowed him to look at the books and asked him for advice. Lots of people want George Soros' advice. Most recently, South African President Nelson Mandela.
Actually, President Mandela asked me, how could South Africa protect itself against speculators like you? And I told him, I wrote him a memo, trying to give him the best advice I could, how to reduce the exposure of South Africa to speculative attack.
That's the old stop me before I kill again approach, right?
Well,
you're telling this is what you can do to stop me.
Whether I or somebody else does whatever is happening in the markets, it really doesn't make any difference to the outcome. I don't feel guilty because I'm engaged in an amoral activity which is not meant to have anything to do with guilt.
Part of the reason he is so rich is that the Soros hedge funds operate offshore in the Netherlands Antilles to avoid scrutiny by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So even while Soros tells Congress and the Treasury that hedge funds must be regulated to stop the global crisis, he's avoiding the rules.
Why is it that Americans can't invest in the quantum fund? It's an offshore fund. Why is that?
Because the fund is not registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We are not
licensed to do business in the United States.
That's right.
Because?
Because we are not registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Because we find it more convenient to operate without it.
So in some ways it's to escape regulation.
Yeah, that's right.
But you've been sitting here talking about the need for regulation.
Yes, and whatever regulations are imposed, we will obey. We already conform to everything.
If the beneficiaries of Soros's billions do not understand the intricacies of SEC rules and offshore hedge funds, they do understand what he's done for them. The president of Haiti is reading his new book, The Crisis of Global Capitalism, and so is President Clinton. Will all the attention spoil George Soros?
George Soros, in a way, is Donald Trump without the humility.
One of your money manager told us that George really does think he's a god.
I mean, if you think that you're God and you go into financial markets, you're bound to come out broke. So the fact that I'm not broke shows that I don't believe that I'm God.